We don't have to win in order to be respected. We have to stay true to ourselves and not become what's popular.
They say when it rains, it pours. But what's happening to Kevin Costner right now is a full-blown hurricane. A sexual harassment lawsuit filed by a stunt double from his movie Horizon.
I know. It just kind of all went downhill from there.
Allegations he vehemently denies.
Close your eyes for a second and become a little girl again and open them and go for a ride with me.
But that a judge just allowed to proceed to trial.
Or what is in my head. I don't want to live that fearfully.
A marriage that fell apart in 2023, 18 years gone. A divorce so difficult and blindsiding that it played out in courtrooms with ugly battles over child support. His ex-wife demanding $248,000 per month, amounts he called out of this world.
It's important to know that you can cry, and that when you do, there's a feeling that comes with this. Do you want to love that hard that you know you're going to cry? Because you are when you love. You're going to lose. There's loss that comes with loving so much.
A 4-part film series, Horizon, that was supposed to be his masterpiece, his legacy, a project he poured $38 million of his own money into. Now a major financial disaster that opened to just $11 million against a $100 million budget, facing potential cancellation. The same project that has sources whispering the unthinkable, that a 70-year-old Hollywood legend could face bankruptcy from the financial strain and associated legal disputes. And at the center of it all, the decision that set everything in motion, walking away from over $1 million per episode, his exit from the hit show Yellowstone due to disagreements with creator Taylor Sheridan, all because he needed to focus on Horizon.
I don't think I'm a great businessman. I'm a pretty good daydreamer. My dad would tell you that.
One choice, one dream, $38 million, and suddenly everything is falling apart. Kevin Costner finally reveals why he quit. But the real story isn't just about leaving a television show, it's about what happened after, the domino effect that destroyed almost everything he'd built.
No, I did everything that I was contracted to do with Yellowstone.
Let's go back to where it all started falling apart. In 2018, Kevin Costner signed on to play John Dutton, the patriarch of a powerful Montana ranching family in a new series called Yellowstone.
Do you have an appointment?
Not what I asked.
At the time, Costner was coming off a quiet decade in Hollywood. His star power had dimmed since his glory days in the 1990s. But Yellowstone changed everything overnight.
If you're joining the family, can you please be the one person in it who talks to me?
The show became a cultural phenomenon, pulling in over 10 million viewers per episode and turning Costner into a television icon. He was back on top, commanding respect and a massive paycheck. For 4.5 seasons, fans watched him embody the tough, uncompromising rancher who would do anything to protect his family's land.
Everyone's forgotten who runs this valley.
It's not the way to remind them. It's a bad idea.
We don't choose the way, little brother.
But while audiences saw a man in control on screen, behind the scenes, control was slipping away. The problems started quietly in 2022. Yellowstone's production schedule was grueling, typically running from April through October each year. That's 5 to 7 months of solid filming, leaving little room for anything else. For most actors, this wouldn't be an issue, but Costner had another dream calling to him. He'd been developing a passion project for over 3 decades, a 4-part Western epic called Horizon. This wasn't just another movie for him, it was the story he'd been burning to tell since before he won his Oscars for Dances with Wolves back in 1990. As Yellowstone's production dragged later and later into the year, Costner found himself trapped. He couldn't commit to both projects, something had to give. By 2023, the tension between Costner and Yellowstone creator Taylor Sheridan reached a breaking point. Contract negotiations for the final season turned ugly. Sources claimed Costner was demanding script approval, a pay increase, and reduced shooting time. He wanted final veto power over every episode, something Sheridan, known for writing solo, absolutely refused to give him. According to reports from the set, crew members and fellow actors were growing frustrated with what they called Costner's ego and unavailability. The accusations got worse. Producers claimed Costner was only willing to work 1 week on the second half of season 5. His attorney fired back immediately, calling this claim an absolute lie and ridiculous. The truth, Costner said, was that production kept moving their schedule around, making it impossible for him to plan anything else.
Starts with the writing. I sound like a broken record, but that's where it starts for me.
He'd fit Horizon into the gaps, but they kept moving the gaps. Things reached a head in May 2024. Costner actually paused filming on Horizon and returned to the Yellowstone set, trying to make it work. But when he got there, he discovered there was no script ready. It felt like a waste of time, another scheduling mess that proved his point. The actor later told reporters he couldn't help them anymore. The situation had become impossible. Then came the final blow. In June 2024, Costner posted a video on Instagram confirming what everyone feared: he wasn't coming back to Yellowstone. He spoke about the beloved series with genuine affection, saying it had changed him and he knew fans loved it. But after a year and a half of working on Horizon and thinking about Yellowstone, he'd realized he just couldn't continue. The door was closed, John Dutton was finished. When Yellowstone's Season 5 Part 2 premiered in November 2024, fans got their answer about John Dutton's fate. The show opened with a devastating reveal. John was found dead in his home. Authorities ruled it as someone taking their own life while he waited to face an impeachment tribunal set up by his son Jamie. But the family didn't believe it, and neither did Costner apparently. When asked about it later, he told radio host Sirius XM that he'd heard it was someone ending their own life, so it didn't make him want to rush to watch it. He correctly guessed it was a red herring, that something else had happened. The show turned John's death into a murder mystery, but Costner wasn't there to see it play out.
You know, if I hear the word billionaire one more time, I think I'm just going to roll over, because I don't have that kind of money.
His co-star Luke Grimes later admitted to reporters that when Kevin left, some of the conflict left with him. It was a telling statement, one that hinted at just how difficult things had become on set. But why was Horizon worth throwing away television's biggest paycheck? What could possibly justify walking away from guaranteed success? To understand Kevin Costner's obsession with Horizon, you have to go back to 1988. That was the year he first started developing this sprawling Western epic, envisioning it as a multi-part saga about the settlement of the American West after the Civil War. 2 years later, he directed and starred in Dances with Wolves, the film that would win him 2 Academy Awards and cement his place as Hollywood royalty. The Western genre had been declared dead, but Costner brought it roaring back to life. He became arguably the most powerful star in Hollywood overnight. But his follow-up, The Postman in 1997, was a disaster that nearly destroyed his career. For decades, Horizon sat on the shelf, waiting. Costner never forgot about it, never stopped believing it was his masterpiece waiting to be born. When Yellowstone made him relevant again, he saw his chance. The problem was simple: no major studio would fully finance Horizon the way Costner wanted. They didn't believe in a 4-part, 12-hour Western saga that audiences would have to see in theaters. The budget estimates were staggering, over $100 million just for the first 2 films. Executives wanted creative control, they wanted script approval, they wanted to make it safe. But Costner had a vision, and he refused to compromise. So he made a decision that shocked everyone who knew him: he would finance it himself. The actor went to his bank and took out a mortgage on his 10-acre waterfront estate in Santa Barbara, one of the most valuable properties in California. He leveraged everything he'd built over a 40-year career. When the final numbers came in, Costner had personally invested $38 million into Horizon, not the $20 million that early reports claimed. His accountant reportedly had what Costner himself described as a conniption fit. Financial advisors warned him this was financial madness, that he was risking everything for a project with no guaranteed return. But Costner didn't care. He told filmmaker Francis Ford Coppola in an interview that it was his life, and he believed in the idea and the story. He wanted his children to understand this about him, that he did what he believed in even when he had fear. He admitted he didn't want to be humiliated, but he was willing to risk it. What nobody knew at the time was just how much pressure this put on his personal life. His wife Christine was reportedly terrified about the financial exposure. She watched her husband mortgage their home, pour millions into a passion project that might never make its money back. The strain was enormous, and it was about to get much worse. Costner believed he had an ace up his sleeve, the Yellowstone audience. He was convinced that the millions of fans who'd fallen in love with him as John Dutton would follow him to theaters. If even a fraction of Yellowstone's 10 million weekly viewers bought tickets, Horizon would be a hit. He needed the film to gross at least $80 million to break even on his personal investment, and that seemed achievable with his built-in fan base. So when the scheduling conflicts with Yellowstone became impossible, he made his choice. He walked away from over $1 million per episode, from guaranteed success and financial security to chase the dream that had haunted him for 36 years. In his mind, this was his legacy, his dances with wolves for a new generation. He was betting everything, and he was about to lose it all. May 2023, Kevin Costner's personal life exploded in the most public way possible. His wife Christine Baumgartner filed for divorce after 18 years of marriage, citing irreconcilable differences. The date of separation was listed as April 11th, just weeks earlier. For Costner, it came as a complete shock. During later court testimony, he would describe the moment she left him, his voice carrying the weight of genuine confusion and pain. They had 3 children together, Caden, who was 16, Hayes, who was 14, and Grace, who was 13. The couple had seemed solid from the outside, but behind closed doors, the pressure of Horizon had created cracks that became canyons. Christine had reportedly been begging him not to risk their financial security on the film, but he wouldn't listen. When she'd finally had enough, she walked away. What followed was one of the most brutal celebrity divorce battles in recent memory. Baumgartner immediately filed for child support, and her initial request stunned everyone. She wanted $248,000 per month, claiming this was the minimum needed to maintain the children in their accustomed lifestyle. Costner's team fired back hard, arguing she was padding the bill with her own expenses. His forensic accountant claimed she'd included costs for plastic surgery, personal trainers, and luxury items that had nothing to do with the kids. Costner himself testified that the actual amount needed was closer to $51,000 per month. The gulf between these numbers set up a nasty court fight that would drag on for months. The first battle was over the house. Their prenuptial agreement stated that Christine had to vacate their $45 million beachfront estate in Santa Barbara within a certain time frame after filing for divorce. She refused to leave, claiming it was the only home the children had ever known. Her lawyers argued that Costner was trying to kick his wife and children out of their home, that the legal basis for his request was non-existent. But the prenup was clear, and eventually a judge ordered her to move out by the end of July 2023. She found a rental property for $40,000 per month and began the painful process of separating her life from his. During this time, rumors started swirling about a man named Joshua Connor. He was described as a family friend who'd been close to both Kevin and Christine for 7 to 8 years. Connor had actually been renting one of Costner's guest houses, a beachfront property that went for over $60,000 per month. Sources claimed that while Kevin was away filming, Christine and Joshua had grown very close. She would visit his guest house almost daily. They'd hang out with their kids. It looked suspicious. During the child support hearings in August 2023, Connor's name came up repeatedly. Christine's attorney insisted they were just friends and nothing more, but Costner's lawyers clearly didn't believe it.
And I'm going to kill him.
The man's got a right to protect his property and his life.
The implication hung in the air. Had something been going on while they were still married? Then came the main event, the child support hearing in September 2023. Both Kevin and Christine took the stand for 2 days of contentious testimony. Costner admitted his world had been shaken up by the divorce, that he had responsibilities he couldn't run away from. He needed to figure out how to spend more time with the children and help them through this nightmare. He also needed to spend time with himself, trying to process what had happened. When questioned about his finances, Costner seemed genuinely unaware of many details. He told his wife's lawyer that his accounting team gave him dumbed-down versions of the numbers, admitting there were a lot of things he didn't know. His forensic accountant argued that his Yellowstone salary, over $1 million per episode, was a complete aberration and shouldn't be factored into child support calculations. Why? Because he'd already quit the show, that income stream was gone. Christine's team fought hard, presenting evidence that Costner's 2022 income had been over $24 million. They argued his proposed $51,000 payment was only 24% of guideline and equivalent to just 2.4% of his cash flow. It was less than the monthly rent he received for one of his guest houses, they pointed out. But Costner's lawyers countered that most of that income came from Yellowstone, which he'd left to pursue Horizon. Without Yellowstone, his monthly cash flow was only around $468,000. Still substantial, but nowhere near what Christine was claiming. The judge listened carefully to both sides, reviewed the evidence, and made his decision. The monthly child support would be $60,209, less than half of the temporary $29,000 she'd been receiving, and nowhere close to the $248,000 she'd demanded. It was a huge victory for Costner, but the victory felt hollow. His marriage was over, his kids were caught in the middle of a public battle, and Christine was clearly moving on. In December 2023, she was spotted with Joshua Connor on vacation in Hawaii. They tried to keep it quiet, but the photos made it clear this was more than friendship. By January 2025, they were engaged, with Connor proposing on a beach in Santa Barbara. And in October 2025, just weeks ago, Christine married Joshua in a private ceremony at a vineyard in Santa Barbara. The man who'd been dragged into their divorce proceedings, questioned by lawyers, was now her husband. For Costner, watching his ex-wife marry someone who'd been in their lives during the marriage must have been brutal. February 2024 saw the divorce finalized, with both parties agreeing to joint custody and putting the ugliness behind them. But the damage was done. Kevin Costner had lost his family just as his dream project was about to premiere. The timing couldn't have been worse. June 28, 2024, the moment Kevin Costner had been waiting for his entire life. Horizon, an American Saga, Chapter 1, premiered in theaters across the country. Just weeks earlier, it had received an 11-minute standing ovation at the Cannes Film Festival. Costner had stood on that stage in France, tears in his eyes, believing he'd created something truly special. Critics at Cannes praised the scope and ambition, the sweeping cinematography, the complex storytelling. He'd poured his heart, his money, and his marriage into this film. Now it was time to see if audiences agreed. Opening weekend results came in like a punch to the gut: $11 million. Against a production budget of $100 million, it was a catastrophic failure. The Yellowstone audience that Costner had counted on never showed up. Industry analysts were shocked. They'd predicted at least 15 to 20 million if his core fan base turned out. But it seemed like leaving Yellowstone had actually hurt him with those viewers. They felt betrayed, like he'd abandoned them for his own ego project. And the general movie-going public. They just weren't interested in a 3-hour Western that was only the first part of a 4-film series. The reviews started rolling in, and they were brutal. Critics called Horizon convoluted, disjointed, and self-indulgent. One reviewer wrote that he could not fathom committing another 540 minutes of his time to this bloated ego trip. Another said it was hard to believe Costner left Yellowstone to make such an embarrassing, poorly told mess. The film's Rotten Tomatoes score settled at 49%, meaning critics were split but leaning negative. Audiences weren't much kinder. Many complained that it felt like the pilot episode of a television series, not a feature film. There were too many storylines, too many characters, no clear resolution. It introduced Kevin Costner as a lone cowboy helping a woman in need, Sienna Miller as a survivor of a town massacre, Luke Wilson leading a wagon train, and more. But none of these threads went anywhere. They just stopped, waiting for Chapter 2. For people who'd paid money to see a complete story, it felt like a ripoff. Week after week, the numbers got worse. By the time Horizon left theaters in August, it had earned just $29 million domestically and $3.6 million internationally. The worldwide total, $32.6 million against a $100 million budget. Even with Warner Brothers only taking 8% for distribution, the math was devastating. Costner needed $80 million to break even on his personal investment. He got less than half that. Behind the scenes, panic set in. Chapter 2 had been scheduled to release on August 16th, just 6 weeks after the first film. The plan was to build momentum, to have people excited for the continuation. But with Chapter 1 bombing so badly, Warner Brothers and New Line Cinema pulled the plug. They removed Chapter 2 from the release calendar entirely, no new date announced. The second film was already finished. Costner had shot it back-to-back with the first one. It had even been screened at the Venice Film Festival in September 2024, where a handful of critics saw it. But the studio had no faith in releasing it theatrically anymore. Sources close to Costner said he was in crisis meetings trying to figure out how to salvage the franchise. He was reportedly in a world of pain, terrified that Horizon would bleed him completely dry. The financial reality was stark. Kevin Costner had lost his $38 million investment. The mortgage on his Santa Barbara estate, now at risk, represented decades of earnings gone in one failed gamble. His accountant's worst fears had come true. Industry experts who'd warned him before the film's release were proven right. One financial analyst had called the project a threat to the estate of Kevin Costner and the financial kiss of death. Another pointed out that Costner's plan to eventually have audiences watch all 4 films in one day at theaters was pure fantasy. Nobody was going to sit through 12 hours of Horizon when they wouldn't even sit through 3 hours of Chapter 1. Insiders told tabloids that Costner was taking the news pretty hard. He'd really believed in these movies, still did, but he was watching his legacy crumble in real time. There was a cruel irony in the failure. Costner had left Yellowstone, which went on to massive ratings for its final episodes without him. The show's producers and cast did just fine wrapping up the story, proving they didn't need John Dutton as much as everyone thought. Meanwhile, the project he'd sacrificed everything for was being called one of the biggest box office bombs of 2024. His ex-wife Christine had been right to be terrified about the financial risk. At least she'd gotten out with her settlement before the walls came down. Kevin Costner, at 69 years old, was staring at potential financial ruin. And somehow, things were about to get even worse. May 2025, just as Costner was trying to figure out how to resurrect his Horizon franchise, a legal bombshell exploded. A stunt performer named Devin Labella filed a lawsuit in Los Angeles Superior Court, accusing Kevin Costner and the Horizon production companies of harassment, creating a hostile work environment, and inflicting emotional distress. The allegations were serious and graphic, claiming that on May 2, 2023, during filming of Horizon Chapter 2, Labella had been subjected to a violent, unscripted assault scene without warning or proper safety protocols. The lawsuit immediately made headlines, adding a dark new chapter to Costner's already troubled story. According to the complaint, Labella had been hired as the lead stunt double for actress Ella Hunt, who played a character named Juliet in the Horizon films. She was an accomplished professional, having worked on high-profile projects like Barbie and American Horror Stories. The day before the incident, May 1st, Labella had performed in a scripted and choreographed assault scene. It had been planned carefully with multiple takes, and it wrapped without any issues. Everyone seemed happy with the work. But the next day, something changed. The lawsuit claims that Costner, who was present on set as the director, suddenly decided he wanted to add a new scene. This one would involve a different actor, Roger Ivans, climbing on top of Juliet and violently pulling up her skirt in what appeared to be the setup for an off-camera assault. The scene wasn't listed on the day's call sheet, it was completely impromptu. Labella's lawsuit states that Ella Hunt became visibly upset when told about the scene change. Hunt allegedly refused to do it and walked off the set. At that point, Labella was asked to stand in for the actress without being given a proper explanation of what was about to happen. She claims she didn't know that Hunt had refused the scene or that it was unscripted. When filming began, Labella alleges that Ivins mounted her and violently pulled her skirt up while she was pinned down. She didn't know when the scene started or ended because Costner never called action or cut. Most disturbing, the lawsuit claims there was no intimacy coordinator present, no stunt coordinator informed, and the set wasn't closed. Multiple people watched on monitors in Video Village as this played out. All of this violated SAG-AFTRA protocols, which require 48-hour notice for any intimate scenes, the presence of an intimacy coordinator, and consent from the performer. The lawsuit describes Labella as being in shock during and after the scene. She alleges she felt exposed, humiliated, and traumatized. The next day, she contacted the intimacy coordinator to report what had happened. In the days following, she experienced bouts of crying on and off set. She went home to spend time with her family, trying to process the experience. When she returned to set, Labella noticed the production team was now being extra careful around her, directing her to stay in her trailer and not be present on set. By June 2023, she'd begun therapy to address symptoms including intrusive memories, sleep disturbance, fears of intimacy, and anxiety. The impact on her career was immediate. When Horizon Chapter 3 began filming in early 2024, Labella wasn't hired back. The stunt coordinator she'd worked with regularly for years also stopped hiring her for other projects. Her career, which she'd spent years building, was effectively over. Kevin Costner's response was swift and aggressive. His attorney, Marty Singer, called the allegations absolutely false and completely contradicted by her own actions and the facts. Singer claimed the scene had been explained to Labella beforehand, that she'd given a thumbs up to her stunt coordinator indicating she was willing to film if needed. He pointed out that Labella had dinner with the stunt coordinators that evening in good spirits and made no complaints. Singer also accused Labella of being a serial accuser who'd worked with the same lawyer on past claims, calling this a shakedown attempt that wouldn't work. Costner himself filed a declaration with the court in August 2025, calling the allegations deeply disappointing and a bold-faced lie. He wrote that the purpose was clearly to embarrass and damage him and the Horizon movies in order to gain a massive and unjustified payday. Having to read about and address allegations involving the words assault and violent scenes had been an absolute nightmare, he said. Costner's legal team submitted statements from several actors and crew members who claimed the scene was not what Labella described, and that she hadn't appeared to object at the time. They tried to get the entire lawsuit dismissed under California's anti-SLAPP law, which protects free speech from frivolous litigation. Their argument was that Horizon dealt with the horrific struggles endured by women in the American West, including their extreme vulnerability to violence, and therefore the scene was protected artistic expression. The judge was somewhat skeptical of this argument, but acknowledged that the film was an expressive work protected under the First Amendment. However, the anti-SLAPP motion failed on the second requirement, that the claims lack minimal merit. In October 2025, just days ago, Judge John Takasugi issued his ruling. He denied Costner's motion to dismiss most of the lawsuit. The judge found that Labella's claims, taken as true, were not frivolous and deserved to proceed. While he did throw out 2 of the 10 causes of action, he left 8 claims intact, including harassment, discrimination, retaliation, and breach of contract. In his ruling, the judge wrote that Labella had submitted evidence which could show she was subjected to an unplanned scene performed without discussion, explanation, choreography, or proper coordinators present. At the very least, this evidence could suggest a reasonable person in the same position would find this to be a hostile work environment. One of Labella's attorneys celebrated the decision, saying, "The creative process cannot and does not give men in power complete impunity." The intimacy coordinator who worked on Horizon, Celeste Cheney, backed Labella's account, calling it an unscheduled, unplanned scene that was unexpectedly sprung on people. She pointed out several red flags, including that Hunt had refused to participate, and that Labella was a stunt professional, not a body double, and therefore shouldn't have been used this way. Costner's attorney immediately announced plans to appeal, which, even if unsuccessful, will likely postpone proceedings for a year or more. But the damage was done. The scandal cast yet another shadow over the Horizon franchise, which was already struggling with its disastrous box office performance. Now, potential viewers had to weigh whether they wanted to support a project embroiled in such serious allegations. For Costner, it was another nightmare in a series of nightmares. His dream project wasn't just a financial failure, it was becoming a cautionary tale about on-set safety and the abuse of power in Hollywood. By late 2024 and into 2025, Kevin Costner found himself trapped in a perfect storm of disasters, each feeding into the next, creating a downward spiral that seemed impossible to escape. His marriage, destroyed in a public and humiliating divorce battle. His Yellowstone career ended in controversy with his character killed off while he watched from the sidelines. His Horizon dream, a financial catastrophe that had cost him $38 million and potentially put his estate at risk. And now his reputation, under attack from serious allegations that threatened to define his legacy. Every choice he'd made since 2022 seemed to have backfired spectacularly. The legal battles multiplied like a hydra. Beyond the Labella lawsuit, Horizon was facing financial litigation that threatened to kill the franchise entirely. City National Bank, which had helped finance the production, initiated arbitration proceedings claiming that Costner's company and the production had failed to pay back their loans. New Line Cinema, the distribution partner, filed cross-claims against Horizon Series Incorporated, Costner's own company. They argued that Costner's firm had failed to hold up their end of the deal financially. These weren't small claims. They involved millions of dollars in disputed payments and contract breaches. With multiple parties suing each other, the Horizon project became entangled in a legal mess that made releasing Chapter 2 nearly impossible. Even though the film was finished and had been screened at Venice, distributing it would require marketing costs and publicity expenses. Nobody wanted to invest more money into a franchise that was bleeding cash and facing lawsuits on multiple fronts. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. While Costner scrambled to save his sinking ship, Yellowstone sailed on to its conclusion without him. The final episodes drew massive ratings, proving the show could function perfectly well without its former star. When asked about the experience of filming without Costner, cast members were diplomatic but honest. Luke Grimes, who played his son Casey, admitted it felt different not having such a big presence around. But he also said something revealing, that when Kevin left, some of the conflict left with him. It was a carefully worded statement that spoke volumes about the tension that had existed on set. The show landed its ending, wrapped up the Dutton family saga, and moved on to spin-off series. Costner wasn't needed after all, and that had to sting. Meanwhile, sources close to Costner painted a picture of a man in crisis. Insiders told tabloids he was in a world of pain, terrified that Horizon would bleed him completely dry. Reports claimed it was only a matter of time before he crumbled under the pressure. His children, caught in the middle of their parents' divorce and now watching their father's public struggles, had to be affected by all of this. Costner had testified during the divorce that his biggest concern was spending time with them and helping them through the separation. But how could he focus on being a present father when his entire world was collapsing? At 70 years old, an age when most actors are thinking about retirement and legacy, Costner was instead fighting for financial survival. The warnings had been there all along. His accountant had freaked out when Costner mortgaged his property. Financial experts had publicly stated before Horizon's release that it was the kiss of death, a threat to his estate. His ex-wife had been terrified they'd wind up broke. His lawyers during the divorce had tried to argue his Yellowstone income shouldn't count for child support because it was an aberration. Everyone around him had seen the disaster coming except Costner himself. Or maybe he had seen it, maybe he'd known the risks, but his obsession with Horizon was so complete that he couldn't stop himself. He'd told Francis Ford Coppola that he believed in the idea and the story. He told his kids he wanted them to understand he did what he believed in. But belief doesn't pay mortgages, belief doesn't win lawsuits, belief doesn't guarantee box office success. Yet even now, even after everything, Costner refused to give up. He continued to insist he would complete all 4 Horizon films. He told interviewers that the third one was even harder than the first two, and the fourth would complete the story. He believed people would eventually fall in love with these characters. When Horizon Chapter 1 landed on Netflix in December 2024, he hoped streaming audiences would give it a second chance. Maybe without the pressure of paying for a theater ticket, viewers would appreciate what he'd tried to create. Reports suggested he was looking for billionaire investors to help fund the remaining films. He'd gone on record saying he needed some of these big billionaires with boats to come make a movie with him. It was a far cry from the independent vision he'd started with, but desperation makes people flexible. The question everyone was asking, what happens next? Could Costner actually complete his four-film saga, or would Horizon remain an unfinished monument to ego and ambition? Would the lawsuits bankrupt him, or could he settle them and move forward? Would his reputation recover from the allegations, or would this become the story people remember when they think of Kevin Costner? At this moment, as I'm telling you this story in October 2025, none of these questions have clear answers. What is clear is that Kevin Costner bet everything on a dream and lost almost all of it. The cost of his obsession can be measured in dollars, $38 million at least, but also in broken relationships, damaged reputation, and years of his life consumed by crisis management. Kevin Costner's story is a cautionary tale that Hollywood will be studying for years. Here was a man who'd reached the pinnacle of success not once but twice, first with Dances with Wolves in 1990, then with Yellowstone in 2018. He had everything: respect, wealth, a loving family, and a hit show that guaranteed his legacy. But it wasn't enough. He wanted more. He wanted artistic immortality. He wanted to create something that would outlive him, a sweeping epic that would be watched and discussed for generations. The tragedy is that in chasing that dream, he destroyed almost everything else in his life. The cost was staggering when you add it all up. $38 million of his own money gone, with his Santa Barbara estate at risk because he'd mortgaged it for the film. His marriage ended after 18 years with a brutal public divorce that saw his ex-wife marry another man just months after their divorce was finalized. His relationship with his children, strained by the divorce, and his constant absence while chasing Horizon. His Yellowstone career concluded in controversy with his character killed off-screen and the show continuing successfully without him. His reputation now tarnished by serious allegations from the Horizon set that a judge has allowed to proceed to trial. And his dream project itself, a box office bomb that critics called self-indulgent, and audiences simply ignored. Everything he touched since 2022 turned to ash. Some people look at Costner's choices and see a true artist refusing to compromise, someone willing to sacrifice commercial success for artistic vision. They admire his willingness to bet on himself, to put his money where his mouth was, to chase a 36-year-old dream despite everyone telling him it was foolish. There's something noble in that perspective, something that speaks to the romantic notion of the suffering artist. But others see reckless ego, a stubborn man who ignored sound advice from his accountant, his wife, his lawyers, and financial experts because he believed he knew better. They see someone who put his own ambitions ahead of his family's security and his professional commitments. The truth probably lies somewhere in the middle, as it usually does. What cannot be disputed is that Kevin Costner made a series of choices in 2023 and 2024 that fundamentally altered the trajectory of his life and legacy. When people look back at his career now, they won't just remember the Oscar wins and the iconic roles. They'll also remember the man who walked away from Yellowstone at its peak, who bet his fortune on a passion project that bombed, who ended up in court facing allegations that contradicted his carefully crafted image. They'll remember the cautionary tale of what happens when obsession overwhelms judgment. Whether Horizon eventually finds an audience on streaming platforms, whether Costner somehow completes all 4 films and vindicates his vision, the damage is done. The price has been paid, and it was higher than anyone should have to pay. Before we wrap up, if you've made it this far in the story, I'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us bring you more deep dives into the untold stories of Hollywood. Your support means everything. Kevin Costner's answer to why he quit Yellowstone led him down a path he never could have imagined when he first made that decision. He quit for Horizon, for a dream that consumed 3.5 decades of his creative life. But in pursuing that dream, he lost his marriage, his fortune, and potentially his legacy. Sometimes the cost of chasing what you believe in is higher than you ever expected to pay. And sometimes, when everyone around you is warning that you're headed for disaster, they're not trying to hold you back. They're trying to save you from yourself. Kevin Costner wouldn't listen to those warnings, and now he's living with the consequences. The legend of Kevin Costner will forever be marked by these choices, by the moment when everything came crashing down, and by the question of whether his dream was worth the price he paid.